go to, and thank you very much for joining us this evening. And this evening is a very special event. It's special because it is our only national webinar on membership this year in Rotary Great Britain and Ireland. And of course, we have some very special guests this evening. So membership in these islands is still a huge concern, and it has to be a priority for every club, even those that think they are quite comfortable, because believe me, things can change very quickly. So when I thought about the message that should be out there tonight, it was very obvious to me. Many of you will have heard me speak at various events, and the reason I do so is because I think the single most important issue surrounding the growth of Rotary across the world, and that is the club experience. It is the vital ingredient in the success of any membership campaign we may choose to operate. Now, you may remember last year that we ran 2 campaigns where we decided to bring in 600 new members in 100 days, and we succeeded. So we decided to do it again, this time 1,000 members in 100 days. We succeeded. So we know that we can bring in new members. However, we still have that issue of the statistic that 50% of our new members will leave within 3 years. So why is that? We need to find out. We need to ask ourselves some difficult questions. We're going to go through some huge changes in Rotary Great Britain and Ireland at the moment, and the next few years we'll see a huge amount of Rotarians with the start of the enterprise membership and the increased direct membership. And our job now is to ensure that we are offering a superb club experience. Now, I was fortunate to attend the International Assembly just a few weeks ago, and I'm delighted that our action plan took a huge part of everything that we spoke about. Now, Stephanie and Tom have led on the subject of club culture and the club experience for a long time now, and I'm delighted that they've given up their time this evening to speak to us on this really important subject, and they have very, very busy diaries. This evening, we're also going to hear from some of our other team leaders to see how things like public image and humanitarian services can help your clubs grow, and also from our chair of the board, Robert Morris. So please put any questions you may have in the Q&A section, and we will try to get some of these done this evening. Many of you know that at the end of this year, I'll be stepping down after 4 years of the Rotary coordinator role and the SAT team leader, and I'll be handing over to Ken, who's running alongside me this year. And Ken is going to take Rotary Great Britain and Ireland into a new era of membership growth. And so with that, I would like to hand over to him to set the team with regards to membership and the North Star project. Ken.
So, Steve, thanks very much for that introductions. So good evening, everyone. It's just great to see so many people here who are passionate and interested in what we do and how we can make things even better. And not least, I'm delighted that our special guests, more of that in a moment, have given up their time at the end of an exhausting trip to Pakistan to be with us and share their experience, their thoughts, and their commitment. Henry Ford said a long time ago, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. And in many ways, Rotary in these islands have been like that, not changing and heading to a horrible number, 20,000 maybe, if we don't embrace change. Losses are not something new. They have been happening for more than a decade. But the good news is we can recruit people. My part this evening is, how does setting the right club culture fit into all that is going on as we develop Rotary and Rotarians, past, present, and future? Let me begin by quickly providing an overview of what we are doing. We're shooting for the stars, the North Star, as we work on increasing our membership in these islands to 60,000 or more by 2028. We have had 60,000 Rotarians in these islands in the past. The good news is we're already halfway there. But as we look at our endeavours, there are 4 channels that we're looking at, that we're working on to achieve the 60,000. And these 4 channels are club membership, which is so important, corporate membership, direct membership, and enterprise membership. And we've brought all this effort together under our business as usual model called North Star. If we look very briefly at these, and I'm going to take them in reverse order. Enterprise members is in many ways similar to corporate, except they're not coming into our club structure yet. But here we can attract businesses of over 100 people to work on their corporate social responsibility through Rotary, and in turn develop their people. And this is currently being managed. And the reason I do that, this effort is a long gestation period to get a business on board. So it's being managed through our team in GB&I in Ulster. And I'm delighted to share that Trust Payments are our first success in this area with 125 new Rotarians. More are being incubated and more detail will be provided separately. Then we have direct membership, where people join Rotary as opposed to a club and give their service and dedication either together or through Rotary clubs in their locale. We just need to ensure they have service projects and engagement. And again, the detail of that can be provided or will be provided separately. We've all heard of corporate membership, and some clubs have embraced this. District Governor Joy Palmer Cooper, Governor-elect, from Alnwick Rotary is one of the gurus in this, as we encourage businesses to develop their people and their corporate social responsibility through Rotary. Enticing small business into Rotary through our clubs, sharing how they can experience all that is Rotary. But naturally, the success of this is dependent on our clubs. So, looking at the clubs, the last channel is one of the most important and the majority of our way forward. Our clubs are a major part of our future. They are not going away. And we all have to ensure they are fit for purpose today and for tomorrow. In reality, and probably many of you, I am today's person and not tomorrow's. That doesn't mean we can't ensure that our legacy, the gift of Rotary, lives on for the next 119 years. It's our duty to do so. And many have cited COVID as an excuse for lost members. The reality is that the rate of losses have not increased during or after COVID. As Steve mentioned, and indeed our immediate past Rotary president, Jennifer Jones, called Rotary a revolving door, citing that half of our new members leave within 3 years. Why? Is what we advertise on the outside of the tin the same as what is inside the tin? Is it what people experience when they actually join? Are our clubs what I call I-cubed, inviting, inspirational, and as I've heard Stephanie saying, irresistible? We have to have the right public image that comes from the right ways of providing service, as well as the right atmosphere at the right price, at the time that suits. What happened there? Technology. At the price, at the time it suits tomorrow's members. Many of you will have heard me say, if you want to know what Rotary should look like and feel like, don't ask a Rotarian. Go and ask a prospective member who is inspired by what we do and wants to join this fabulous organisation. And let's make Rotary equal to what they need to be able to give back to the future of Rotary. But enough of all of that and how this fits in. We're actually delighted, really delighted that incoming RI President Stephanie and her aide, Tom, both experts in all of this, are investing their time today to share their thoughts. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Stephanie and Tom.
Thank you very much, Ken. And Tom and I certainly appreciate the invitation to be with you. But first, let me say hello to all of the family of Rotary who are joining us from so many places around the globe. It really is heartwarming to see that so many of you are interested in club culture and growing Rotary. So tonight, what we want to do is talk with you a little bit about the culture of your particular club. So Tom and I are going to go through some slides, and at the end of the event, I believe we will have some time to answer some questions for you. So Tom, let's go ahead and get started. So the very first question you may wonder is, what is club culture? Well, simply put, it's the way things are done in your Rotary Club. It's a compilation of all the traditions and values and attitudes and expectations and things that happen in your club that create the atmosphere, the aura of your club. And when a culture is good, there are good things that happen in that club. Membership grows, foundation giving is up, the public image is fantastic, and all of those feed off of each other. But if you notice that in your club, any of those elements are not happening, they're going in the wrong direction, it may be time for you to assess your club culture and to determine, is there something that we can do a little better? You know, in the States, I had a background in higher education, and we were very fond of always using the term continuous improvement. You may be very good at something, but there's always a way to get even better. So that's what we're talking about. Next slide, Tom. Oh, so again, this is just reiterating that, you know, we're looking at the behaviors and the traditions of your club, and you'll be able to tell if your club is in good shape. You know, you don't need anyone else to come and say, oh, your club is in some difficult straits. You will be able to tell. And the number one way to tell if your club culture is not working is to take a look at your membership. Think about it. As Rotary, we are a membership organization that does service, and it is not rocket science. When we have more hands, more Rotarians, then we can do more service. When we have less Rotarians, we have less hands to do service. So that's why maintaining and growing our membership is increasingly important in this world, because the world needs us now more than ever before. Next slide, Tom. So I'd like you to do a simple exercise wherever you are around the world. You'll see this photo on the screen. There is a young lady who has her arms crossed. So I'd like you to do that. Okay, when you did that, some of you put your right hand over your left hand, and some of you put your left hand over your right hand. So whatever you did, switch it and do the opposite. So Tom, how did that make you feel when I asked you to do it differently?
Well, Stephanie, it made me feel very uncomfortable, much like when my wife makes me go to yoga class.
So if changing culture is so difficult and it feels weird, why are we asking clubs to do it, Tom?
Because our surveys that we've done over the last few years to Rotarians and non-Rotarians, they all say that the reason they left is because they don't feel comfortable with their club's culture or the club's environment.
So the way to start taking a look at your club culture is to, first of all, examine it. If you are a member of your existing club and you've been going for a while, sometimes it's very hard to just articulate, you know, what is the culture in our club? But fortunately, there are assessments that are available, and that's where you begin. You always have to take a look at where you are to determine what steps you need to take to get to where you want to be. And assessments are important because it creates a starting point. You know, when Tom and I do this presentation live, one of the things I always suggest to people is that this is like going on a diet. before you start, you have to step on the scale and you have to see what the starting point is. And if you decide then that you want to do the dieting to lose weight or gain weight, who in the heck does that? But whatever, you need to start, where you're starting. So then you employ all of the strategies that you're going to use. And then at the end of that time, you get back on the scale and you see, have I made any progress? So that's what an assessment does for your club.
And it's interesting because a lot of times Stephanie and I will receive calls from clubs and districts, and they always ask, well, where do we start? We had a club approach us last year, and there was a big issue about whether they should do away with their Pledge of Allegiance, which in the US, we do a Pledge of Allegiance to the country. And should we do away with the four-way test? Well, usually the presidents of a club or the district governor of a district will say, our district's equally divided. Our club is half for and half against. So when we tell them to take a survey, it's interesting because a lot of times it's only a small percentage that actually want to change or want to keep things the same. And so a lot of times when you do that assessment, you can use that as a valuable information that you can go back to your club president or district governor and say, this is what we really have. It's just a vocal minority that wants things changed. So like Stephanie says, there are a whole lot of assessment tools. Rotary has 7 official kinds. And it's interesting because there are some that we like better than others. We're not so much in favor of exit interviews because a lot of times Rotarians are nice people and they won't tell you why they're leaving. And also, even if they did, there's not a lot of time when someone says they're leaving to make a change to keep them. So Rotary recommends doing a survey once a year. Now, surveys don't have to be official from the standpoint that you don't have to use one of those 7 types. What you could do is just, if you have a smaller club, you could just pick up the phone and you could call them or, do a sample poll and ask them, do you like our socials? Do you like where we meet? Do you like when we meet? Do you like our service projects? Or they can have open-ended questions that say, what type of service projects or social would you like to see? Now, of course, if you have a club that numbers in the hundreds, then you may want to use one of the survey tools that Rotary uses, the Health Club Check, or something like that. And you don't have to use it exactly verbatim. What you can do is you could take those survey tools and you could download it into SurveyMonkey or some other electronic platform, and you could tailor it to make it so it's easy to use from your members. If you don't like too much legalese or too much Rotaryese, you can make it simple. Now, why would you do a survey once a year? Well, the culture of your club and your district is changing every time a new member comes in or a member leaves. So after you've gone through a full year cycle, you have a different club than when you started. And what Stephanie and I like to say is, if you give them that irresistible club, they will stay. If you don't make your club irresistible, you don't give them the culture that they want, don't give them the things that they want, then they're going to walk. And when they leave, sometimes their comments aren't as positive as we'd like them to be. So Stephanie, do you want to tell them about the mayor we had in the 70s in New York?
Yes, some of you may be old enough to remember in the United States, there was a mayor in New York City by the name of Ed Koch. And Ed Koch was very famous for a certain saying and a behavior attached to it. What he would do is walk around everywhere and ask, how am I doing? How am I doing? How am I doing? He'd say that in the subways. He'd say that in restaurants. He'd say that any place that he'd meet people. That was his way of connecting with his constituents to get feedback on his performance. So an assessment is basically the same thing. It's us asking our club members, how are we doing? And what are the things that people are thinking about?
And don't be afraid that when you're conducting a survey, then you're going to get bad news. Because we've done a lot of this. And what we found out is when you survey, either will it be in public, in person, or whether it be online, there's only about 5% of the individuals who are going to say they're dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. When you actually drill down to why they're dissatisfied, what you're going to find out is it's something that it's easy to fix. A lot of times people say, I don't like getting up early in the morning. Well, you can have a satellite club or a companion club They're still members of your club, but they meet at a different time. But the important thing is to get that information from your members.
So this slide talks about an important thing that happens when we do these assessments. We come to a point and we find out, whoa, okay, I've done an assessment in my club and it's really much different than I thought. Maybe it's even much worse than I thought. So this is the point where we have an opportunity to decide, what should we do? In some cases, you can decide, this isn't the right club experience for me, and maybe I can take off and find a different club. And that's for an experienced Rotarian that understands that there are other options. But too frequently, especially with our newer members, they simply take off. The other option is that you may decide to stay and fight for your club and to change its culture because you like the people who are in the club. They've become your friends. They've become part of your Rotary family. So you decide to take some of the difficult steps to work on the culture to make the club experience more irresistible.
But sometimes something happens when you're choosing between flight or fight. And that's what Stephanie calls the freeze.
Right. The freeze is the absolute moment when you realize that the club isn't at its best. And you have to decide on what actions you're going to take. If you decide to stay with the club, what are the things that you're going to need? One of the first things that becomes important for us is to realize that you need an influencer or spark plug in addition to you to help you move the needle. I want to give you a personal example here. I'm in my third Rotary Club. In my very first Rotary Club, which was the Rotary Club of California, Pennsylvania, USA, I spent 10 wonderful and happy years. But because of the job shift, I moved to a second club, which was closer to where my employment was located. By that time, I was a past district governor. So I joined the club only to find out that they were a lunch bunch. They really didn't do anything. They didn't do community service. They didn't do international service. They weren't involved in youth exchange. They just didn't do anything. And despite my best efforts, you can imagine what happened. As a past district governor, I'd say, how about we try? And they would simply glaze over. Or I'd say, maybe we can try something. And they'd look down at their shoes. I was simply unable to move the needle because I was trying to do it all by myself. Ultimately, I ended up leaving that club to find a third club, which is my club currently, the Rotary Club of McMurray, Pennsylvania, in the USA. Very happy there because it is really a club that is simply irresistible, has a wonderful culture, and is very active.
So if we've done everything we possibly can with the club and we still have individuals that aren't happy, what your club can do is you can form a separate club that is a companion club. Sometimes in some areas of the world, they're called satellite clubs because you have the host club, which is the main club, and then you have another club that kind of hovers around it. Sometimes they go to your meetings, sometimes they don't. They have their own meetings at their own time. You know, we find this works especially in situations where individuals aren't able to attend the host club's meetings. In our district, about a year ago, we had 8 teachers who weren't able to attend any of the meetings because the club actually met at lunch during the day, and they were all teachers. So they ended up meeting on the same day, but at night. So that's one way to do it. Now, if you have people of action in Rotary Great Britain and Ireland that you want to reach, but they just don't feel comfortable for a reason or another, maybe they're several young people and they feel like they want to be with other young people, what you can do is you can start a new club. Now, Stephanie and I, we both love the clubs that we're in. She calls them legacy clubs. I call them traditional clubs. And they're the backbone of Rotary right now. But what we're finding out is these new clubs are a way to reach out into your community and bring in potential people of action by telling them what Rotary can do for them. with global grants and local grants and the network of 1.4 million Rotarians and Rotaractors all around the world. But before you start thinking of a new club, you might get some resistance. And we especially see this around president-elect training seminars, because presidents tend to feel that if they start a new club, that's going to take members away from their current club. And rightfully so, they see their job as growing their current club. So we heard this so often that we went to Brian King, who's Rotary International's Director of Membership Development, and we asked him if he had any data. And at the time, staff did not have data, but we asked him to conduct a survey. And what we found out is that 88% of the members who are new to a new Rotary club are brand new to Rotary. They're not coming from another club. And it can be argued that some of that 12% may have left Rotary, but for the fact that they had another club that fit them better. So, but before you start a new club, you have to ask why. Like Simon Sinek, you always have to know the why. Well, we've come up with 5 reasons that we have been told people experience and Rotary experiences when they form a new club. 1, it grows Rotary quicker. When we started our network for empowering women, we added 50 members at one time. It would take a lot of time for each of us to add 50 members to our current club. And also what we're finding is these new clubs retain members longer. Now, why is that? Well, a lot of these new clubs are cause-based clubs. Now, what's a cause-based club? It's basically a club that is around a cause. So maybe serving veterans, or serving people who have hearing impairment, or serving to end certain atrocities, such as ending human trafficking. Now, the important thing is not to think this is a club made up of a certain type of individual. A veterans club is not made up of all veterans. The veterans club that we started here in Minnesota actually has non-veterans in it, but they want to serve veterans. Their club administrator has a son-in-law who's an active duty person in the military. So why do they stay longer? Well, we heard in the beginning in the introduction that Steve said that people, Jennifer was saying, Ken was saying, Jennifer said it's a revolving door, and Steve was saying we lose people. And he's absolutely right. We bring in 150,000 each year worldwide, and we lose about 160,000 each year. The scary part is about 10% of those leave within their first year. Well, these cause-based clubs actually help us retain them longer, because if people are passionate about a cause, there's no more motivating factor. So if you bring them together to solely work on that cause, then they usually stay until what they realize, all of us realize, which is our best friends are in Rotary, we would never want to leave. So the other thing is these new clubs attract younger and more diverse members. In my club, we have service projects such as picking up trash along the highway, and raking leaves, and feeding the hungry. Well, that works great for my generation. We were told to go and serve, and we enjoy that. But a lot of, especially younger members, they like to focus in one particular area and have great impact, such as working on the environment. And it's interesting because during my year as governor, together we started in my district 8 clubs. But if you look at the results at the end of the year, we actually went from 30% females to almost 33% females. But when we broke down the analysis, it was 3 clubs that made that happen. We had our environment club, which is over 50% female. We had our network for empowering women, which was almost 70% female, and our end human trafficking club, which was over 60%. So these new clubs, they're actually more diverse. And it's interesting because you don't have to change their culture. Because you bring them in, they already have their own culture, and it's a culture they want. The fourth reason is new clubs actually expand Rotary's reach out into the community. When we started the first service club in the world to end human trafficking, 2 weeks after we started, we were initiating a new member. She was from Turkey, and she had not joined Rotary before. And because she was a teacher and she was busy working during the day, and she wanted to focus all her efforts just on ending human trafficking. So after that meeting, when we inducted her, I received an email from the then sitting Rotary International President, Mark Maloney, and he let me know that that person was his sister. And he had been trying for 40 years, 4 decades, to bring her into Rotary, but there just wasn't a club that fit how she wanted to serve. So these new clubs, if they don't like our current clubs, we can have them and help them form a new club that'll fit their time, fit their schedule. New clubs also give us an opportunity to partner with other groups. You know, we heard this morning about the enterprise model. We heard about the corporate model. What if we were able to partner up with different organizations, such as chambers of commerce? You know, we started a Rotary Club, and all these easy for Rotary clubs, not just Rotary clubs. We started one up for families who have autistic children and for the members who are autistic themselves. And we partnered up with the local community, and we were able to get a lot of members very, very quickly. It was a very successful club. When we wanted to bring people in to serve their environment on a platform that was going to be worldwide, we called up SRAG, and they gave us a list of 120 individuals who really wanted to work on the environment. Because we know that our Rotary activities, they help us fund projects, they help us structure projects, but they don't actually do projects. You know, some of those younger people in SRAG want to get their hands dirty. They actually want to dig in the dirt, plant those trees, not just help others structure projects. So the thing to remember about these clubs is they're not hard to start, and there's a lot of people like Ken and Steve who can help you do it. So we also we are going to do a club changeover. We have something that's important that Stephanie is going to talk about, which is buy-in.
Yeah, buy-in is a really important element that helps us as we move into club culture. Buy-in means that we reach out to every member in our club to find out what's important. Buy-in will help create the change management that you need. So when you're asking club members, you don't want to ask just several, the key, most vocal people. You want to involve everyone. Involving everyone means that you're going to get a lot of information. Some of it's going to be usable, and some of them won't be. But the fact that you give people an opportunity to be heard is what creates buy-in. And buy-in is important then, as you want to move the club forward and make some of those tiny changes or more significant changes. You'll need everyone to be on the bandwagon. So we mentioned earlier that it's really important to find people in the club who will believe in the kinds of changes that you're interested in implementing. It's kind of easy to find these people because you'll either already know them because you have had conversations outside of a club meeting, or you can help the members see these qualities. The people who are always stepping up say, yes, I'll do that. They're optimistic. They're the creative people. They're the ones who aren't afraid to try something. They don't say, oh, we've always done it that way. So when you find members like this, these are the people to approach and suggest to them that have some ideas about how to make clubs stronger, how to change club culture. In addition to finding spark plugs, also important to find out what is the difference. Well, spark plug is someone who believes in what you are talking about. The catalyst is the person who can actually help make that change occur. Say for instance, one of the things you find out in your club is that aren't members who are using the Learn Center. In fact, most of your club haven't even heard of Learn Center. So of course you can talk about it. You and your spark plug say you really need to Learn Center. There's a whole sort of information there. But the catalyst, we have a member that says, you know what, next week, bring your laptop or your iPad. We have connectivity in this room. And I'm going to show you how to get into my Rotary and show you how to make an account if you don't have one. And then we're going to go Learning Center. That's your catalyst.
So when you decided you wanted to make a change, the question is, how do you do it? Well, there's a certain steps that you can take that Rotary calls the Rotary change model. Now the first step in this, and you'll see this wheel, you move forward, but also you can move backwards if you need to retrench where you're going. If you find out there's a certain step that you feel like you haven't really done well enough, you can move a little bit backwards before you move forward. So assessment is what we've been talking about. Like Stephanie's saying, you want to step on the scale. That's where you understand your environment, you understand what the members of your club want, and you realize you have to move forward. So then the second step is you have to design it. You have to paint that picture that says, if we want to grow membership, we need to do this. Maybe have more socials, or maybe you need to have more service projects. But you're not going to be able to move forward unless you motivate and inspire people. So having different success stories, either in clubs around you or in the district or even from the Rotary magazine, can help you paint that picture. And then after you design it, you have to build it. So when you're building it, you have to find out what you need to be successful. Let's say you want to attract people virtually and not just in person. Well, you may have to buy that out camera or a mixing board for the sound, those kind of things. And then after you build it, then you have to go to implementation. Now let's say you feel like you haven't communicated enough, you don't have a good communication scheme, you can go back and you can communicate better, that kind of thing, before you move to implementation. The most important thing about implementation is that you need to take care of your members. So we talked about a few members who might not want to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, you don't want to just mandate something from on high and say, you have to do this. What you want to do is you want to bring in everyone, not just your president-elect and your president nominee, but you want to bring everyone around. And if there's people who are not happy, you don't want to just have them leave. You want to make sure that you nurture them and let them know why the change is important, and give them a new assignment under the new change. And then what you want to do is you want to sustain. It's interesting, Stephanie and I, sometimes at President-elect seminar, for the last issue of the day, we go around and they say, tell us the one thing you've learned. We were at a seminar at one time where there were great, lots of big changes. People were taking notes. And when we got to Troy, a gentleman named Troy was his president-elect, he said that he actually wanted to have pie for desserts instead of the regular desserts that were given. And that caused a lot of laughter. Well, we ran into that gentleman a few years later, and he ended up having the club that was second largest in the district. Because sometimes making that small change actually excites people, and then they start bringing more changes up. And you change your culture from one resisting to change to one that wants to innovate. So, and you don't want your change as president or district governor to be gone the next year. So that's why you bring in your district governor-elect, your district governor nominee, and your district governor designate. Same within a club. But of course, we have to have buy-in.
We mentioned buy-in earlier, but it's so important. It's worth talking about it a second time. And again, in Rotary, we talk about becoming participant-centered, and certainly that means all kinds of people, the beneficiaries and people who come in contact with us, like students of the Parents of the Month, but it also certainly means our own members. So we want to make sure that when we're involved in any kind of activity around culture, that we ask our own club members and we listen to them. As I said earlier, not everything that is going to be suggested is going to be something that you can implement, but giving them the opportunity to be heard is what creates the buy-in.
And that's all the time we have for the presentation, but we'd love to take some questions. We want you to leave with all the answers answered that you had when you came in.
Well, thanks very much, Stephanie and Tom. There's so much to take in there as well, and there are some questions coming in. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to hand over to Phil and to Janine, who are going to run through the sort of public image and humanitarian side as well before we go to our questions. So first of all, Phil.
Wow. Well, that was incredible. And yeah, really Really good. So thank you for that, Stephanie and Tom, really setting the scene. I'm here very briefly tonight because there's lots of people in the room that will have heard from me. As you can well imagine, I am putting a public image slant on my 2 minutes that I've got here today. And I would say that public image is a critical component of what we are trying to achieve. In order that we make our service projects and our vibrancy look exciting to potential members, it needs to have our fabulous Rotary brand stamped all over it. We are a global brand with worldwide reach, and Rotary International give us a phenomenal tool which is dead easy to access. It is not within the My Rotary login. It is open to anyone that can use Google. The Rotary Brand Sensor is a phenomenal resource that gives you everything that you need to know about our brand and how to use it, but also much more. There are images and videos, as well as being able to create the logo, which I'm sure you've all heard from me before. But public image is not just all about using the right logo and the brand and the right colours and the right fonts. It's so much more than that. It is about storytelling and how we tell our stories of the work that we do in our communities, whether they are near or further afield. It is the stories that make our work look exciting and vibrant, and when used with the brand, consistent across the globe. There are Rotary clubs all over the world doing similar projects to us, and it is the way that we tell our stories that connects us together. So I would urge you to tell stories about the work that you do. However small the project is, tell it as a story to your community. Tell them that you're doing work in their community. But the most important aspect of storytelling, not only telling the story with a beginning, middle, and an end, but it's the impact that the work that we do creates. It's the money that we raise to buy that wheelchair. It's the impact that a litter pick does on our community. The work that we do in a local recreation ground or park, and bringing it back into community life. It is the work that we do internationally. The impact makes the biggest difference. Now, tonight's not about public image, and I've only got 2 minutes, and that's probably all I want to say tonight. So use our brand. We are a global brand, Rotary Brand Centre, and tell your Rotary stories. But remember to major on the impact of those stories and the good that we do in the world on a daily basis. That's all I want to say tonight. You know how to contact me if you want any assistance from me and the team. I am now going to hand over to Janine, who's going to talk to you about humanitarian service. Thank you, Janine.
Thank you very much, Phil, and thank you for a really inspiring session that we've already had so far, and I look forward to the questions and answers. Service, people of action. I'm not sure that there are many people that have joined Rotary because they want to sit and have chicken and carrots and mashed potatoes. It's about what we do. It's about existing members, it's about new members, but it's about what are we doing and the impact that we are having. As a humanitarian service team in Great Britain and Ireland, we're here to help clubs, districts, clusters, hubs, to help shape their projects, improve their projects, increase their impact, share their successes, because we need to make sure that what we're doing in whatever our clubs are, that we are doing them in a way that is meeting today's needs and preparing our communities for tomorrow's challenges. I would love to reach out to you all to contact us to see how we can help, to contact the humanitarian service team, to see how we can work in your clubs, in your districts, in your clusters, so that together, collaborating with membership, with public image, and with our own Rotary Foundation, one of the best charities in the world, how can we have more impact? How can we have clubs that are really exciting, where the culture is one where you can look to new ideas, change existing ones, tweak the best things? Let's move forward together by collaborating as people of action. Ken, I think over to you, please.
Thanks so much, Janine, and thanks for giving us that very quick overview. Very much appreciated. And thanks to everybody so far. It's now my delight to bring in Robert Morris, our chair of Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland. Robert.
Hi, good evening, Ken, and thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland has a 5-year strategic vision known as our North Star Initiative. This initiative is overseen by the Board of Great Britain and Ireland. However, it's very much for Rotarians across these islands to be proactively a part of making this vision into a reality. The 60,000 members by 2028 mentioned earlier may seem, and indeed is, a big challenge. However, with the new membership channels mentioned earlier by Ken, Rotary has a type of Rotary for all. Online membership may seem a difficult concept for some without the structure of the club president and so on, with which we are all familiar. However, for those who now live their lives online, Rotary can become an active facet of their lives. That said, clubs exist, and old and new exist, and remain a fundamental part of what Rotary's being is about. Indeed, they will make up over 50% of the North Star target. So Great Britain and Ireland, we have a long-term commitment to the North Star goal, a goal that's aided by investment committed by Rotary International and by a lot of work across these islands. Work that's being undertaken by the Great Britain Island Board under a number of workstream headings, such as member experience, communications, and organisational and financial matters. And these are leading to new tools to assist Rotarians. I mentioned the Learning Centre was mentioned earlier, and that will be one of our tools that will be able to give people a new onboarding experience. And we've got initiatives for the specialist advisor teams to take forward, initiatives that work holistically across the specialist advisor teams. Of course, that's why we've got humanitarian, public image, and membership all here tonight to work together. Now, our initiative is already bringing in changes that will be making joining and being a Rotarian easy and a positive experience. We have a membership process that we're working on that we are one for all, streamlined and online and simple to do. Onboarding processes, learning about Rotary beyond the club as well as within. And again, that will be using the Learning Centre as one of the many tools that we have in mind. And very important, there will be ongoing support for newer members from the SAT team, specialist advisors. And we have joint projects working across the clusters with funding to enable, funding from Great Britain and Ireland to enable those clusters and groups of districts to create long-term projects that promote Rotary or generate a cluster-wide service project. Clubs and Rotarians need to create the environment that brings in members and keeps them engaged, of what we've heard so much this evening. Within Great Britain and Ireland, at all levels, we are helping to provide the right environment and tools to make that a reality in the wider world of Rotary. With that positive environment, your clubs can participate in projects and activities beyond that theoretical boundary of the club, and hence enhance their own club culture. And that's for me for tonight, and I'll now pass you back to the team.
And I think it's back to me. Thanks very much for that, Robert. So we're almost coming on to our area of questions. I just wanted to bring in Stephanie, really, just if you were able to maybe sum up what we've heard so far in a minute, and then we'll go on to some questions. And somebody actually said in one of the questions, and maybe we could actually kick it off with this, if you were at any kind of function and anything, and you were given 1 minute to say to people, why should you join Rotary International? How would you spend that minute?
Well, I would spend that minute saying that Rotary is an organization that allows us to change the world. It's a way for us to use an organization to help give back. I also want to comment about a couple of things that I heard from Phil and others, that how important public image is. You know, what we're talking about tonight, club culture, is not easy. If it were easy, we wouldn't be in this spot. It takes perseverance. It takes hard work. You know, recently I was on a plane, and the chap sitting next to me, of course, you know, we started engaging in conversation, and I got him talking, and, you know, we were talking about Rotary. By the end of that plane ride, he said, you know, I'm interested in Rotary. I found out he was from my area. So when I departed the plane, I got his contact information, and I shared it with the club president who'd be in his area. And a month later, I checked in with the club president. I said, hey, have you connected with Ken yet? And the club president said, no, we tried, but we didn't connect. 2 months later, I called and I said, have you and Ken made a connection? Well, we keep missing each other. 4 months later, I called and I said, have you and Ken really had a connection? Have you been able to bring him to a Rotary Club meeting? No, you know, I'll have to try again. That's our problem. People don't see how important it is. You know, it's really a matter of persevering and going after it and not letting those leads drop. The second thing is, we continue to have a perception problem in Rotary. Most of the world who does not know Rotary thinks that we are Romeo, rich old men eating out. Look at us. That's not who we are at all. We have changed. You know, we had the same meeting model for over 100 years, where we met 4 times a month. We took attendance. You know, we had very traditional things that, and there's nothing wrong with those, but the world changed. People changed. People's access to time changed. So finally, in 2016, our Council on Legislation gave us the tools that we needed to create new meeting models. We have e-clubs. We have corporate clubs. We have passport clubs. We have cause-based clubs. So my message to the world is, if you have the heart and the hands for service, there is a place for you in Rotary. You need to check it out.
Thanks, Stephanie. That's great, and what a great story about the guy on the plane. You know, I had a very similar story this week where I've connected somebody with who was a little bit disenchanted with their first meeting with Rotary, and they've now connected with another learning facilitator that I met last week in Las Vegas, and we've introduced somebody to a new club and somebody into Rotary. So it's great. I think sometimes you do perhaps have to take people by the hand. Thanks very much for that. Ken, how are we doing with questions? I know we've got lots of them, and I know that we've got an awful lot of questions already sent in to us, and I know that people we are going to deal with them. So, Ken, what have we got?
We've got over 90 questions through our registration link alone. They can be summarised into specific groups. I'm also conscious of where we are with time. I'm going to pick up one. So we've talked about change. I'm going to put that aside. Looking at diversity, maybe equity and inclusion, what age group should we focus on for quality growth? And don't say all. And how should we motivate them to be proactive in club activities?
Well, the first thing, Ken, that we have to remember is when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, it leads us to belonging. And so that whole concept is about looking at our communities. I tell Rotary clubs, look at your community. And if your Rotary club mirrors what's in your community, then you have a handle on your future. If it doesn't, then you have an opportunity. So that certainly could mean all kinds of different aspects of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It could be age, it could be gender, it could be vocation, it could be so many different things. But the key is to look at your community and decide, what is missing? Who don't we have? Where should we put our efforts to bring balance to our Rotary Club?
Perfect. I'm really conscious. My promise to everybody that's on here is Steve and I will, I'm not sure of the time scale yet, but we will get an answer out for every question we've been asked, either through the Q&A or through what's been submitted, for sure. And there's a whole lot in there. I'm really going to hand back to Steve.
Okay, we're going to take a couple more questions. I'm in charge. I don't care. Let's just power on through. We're going to take some more questions. We don't get this opportunity very often. And actually, this is a question that's coming from somebody from your own district, Tom. Sharon Bloodworth, this is Sharon, DG from Tom's Minnesota district. And I think this is a great question. The new theme, the magic of Rotary, is fabulous. Do you have any tips and magic tricks on how to incorporate the excitement of this team into club culture?
Well, let me take a stab at that first, and then I'll pass it on to Tom, since Tom and Sharon are in the same area. Well, first of all, it's important to understand that there are no magic tricks to what we do. The magic comes from the fact that we have changed people's lives. Those of you who are not at IA, I will tell you the story about where the theme came from. Years ago, I was in the Dominican Republic, and I was installing water filters in homes so that people had access to clean water. And I was in a Haitian home in the Dominican Republic, and there were 2 women, a grandmother and a mother, and 3 young boys. So we'd put the water in dirty and it would come out clean, and we'd put it in dirty and it would come out clean. Well, I'll never forget the first time we stopped the water flow. One of the little boys grabbed my sleeve and he said, lady, show me that magic again. Well, clearly the water filter was not magic. We worked really hard to take those filters, to install them, water projects around the world. That's what we're doing. The magic was the fact that that young boy now has an opportunity to go to school instead of going to search for clean water. So we, as Rotarians, have changed the lives of that family by the act of putting in that water filter. And you all, everyone on this call has a story like that. Because when you create lasting change for someone or some family or some community, that's what you're doing. You're creating magic. You're creating hope for them. And that's what the magic is. Tom, what do you want to add?
Stephanie, I think you're absolutely right. And it's interesting, especially this question coming from Sharon, because those of you know who Sharon is. She's got a lot of energy. And I think whenever you put energy
We can't hear you, Tom. Did you accidentally mute?
No, we can hear.
Yep, they can hear me.
Yeah. Good.
So you put energy in, you get energy out. And it's interesting because we started together, 5 clubs went in and started Rotary Community Corps. And I think this is a good example. So many times our clubs do the same thing again and again, year after year. We have the same galas year after year. We do the same service projects year after year. Well, when we started a Rotary Community Corps in our area to serve the Afghan refugees, what we found out is, and it's interesting because when we started, our idea was our new neighbors, these refugees, they would become members and then we would grow that way. But what we found out was we actually engaged the members in those 5 clubs and they started getting involved, and we didn't lose those people and we got more of their friends and family. It's interesting because we asked the refugees, what's the biggest problem you have? And they said, well, we can't get jobs because we can't drive. And the driver's license manual is written in English, and Pashtun and Dari we can't translate on Google Translate. So luckily, I just brought a friend of mine from a hedge fund into our club, and he had software that would do that. So he got involved with that. But also our reputation, the public image of Rotary grew in this community because we started bringing in mayors. We started bringing in different kind of businesses, some large companies to hire these individuals. We started bringing in librarians so we could sign them up sign the refugees up for library cards so they can have free internet. So I can say, Sharon, to answer your question, if you try, you will get energy back and it will grow. Rotary will. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Tom. And actually, probably inadvertently, you've answered some of the questions that are in they're actually in our chat here as well. So there's a couple of comments in here. I think we should teach young leadership, age group 18 to 25. Of course, we have our Rotaract for that. Some great comments in here as well. Eve Conway's actually put a comment in here which says, excellent presentation. Thank you, Stephanie. Tom, Stephanie wants to see simply irresistible clubs and says, how many such clubs do you think we have at the moment? So I think it's probably directed at myself and Ken. And that's probably, Eve, that's something that's very difficult to measure. But I think the purpose of this evening was to ensure that people take a look at their clubs, take stock, do a club survey, and put some of these things into practice. Let's not be frightened to change. Let's do something different. 3 little words, do something different. And it can change the dynamics of your club. And just by getting one person in, listen to me telling the director what's going on here. But that's it's for me, it's fairly simple. Do something different, bring one person in. If you get one person in, it changes the dynamics of the club tremendously. It really does. Ken, have you got one more question? Do you want to do one more before we finish?
Yeah, I'll have to be a quick one then.
One then.
How do we ensure that Rotary is relevant for the next 30 years in the developing and still relevant in the developed world?
The easiest way to do that, Ken, is to make sure that we ask people as they're coming into our clubs, what are your expectations? Because people join Rotary for different reasons. Ultimately, it boils down that we end up serving. But think about Paul Harris. When he joined Rotary, he was an attorney in a new city. He didn't know anybody. So he found 3 other individuals and said, let's meet every week. We'll rotate. We'll go from your office to yours and we'll find out about each other. So initially it was fellowship that brought Paul Harris to create Rotary. Service came almost 2 years later when that Rotary Club initiated a project to put public toilets in Chicago. For some people, it is service. They look and say, wow, look at that group of individuals. They're doing wonderful things in our community around the world. They want to roll up their sleeves. Fabulous. There are some who look and say, I'm a young professional. Look at all these business people. If I became a member of this club, I bet I could learn things that I could take to my business. Of course they can. They can learn about leadership, about public speaking, about project management, all sorts of things. And then finally, some people may look and say, I have a business. These are all business people. This would be a great place to network. Of course it is. It's the original BNI. And so there are really different reasons people want to come into our clubs. So when we ask them as they're coming in, then we are better able to create our programs, our speakers, our projects. And from time to time, you are going to hit on something that is relevant to that new member. And that's what's going to keep them engaged. So my final comment, I know we have to go, but my final comment is to remember that 3 things must happen at the same time in order for membership growth to occur. We must attract people to our clubs, our existing clubs. We must retain the members in our existing clubs. It is no good to bring in 100 members into a district if 200 members are leaving that district. That is not good. So we must work on attraction and retention and new clubs at the same time. Because as Tom mentioned, there are some individuals that will be looking for something different. So our new clubs, especially cause-based clubs, give those people an opportunity to find what it is they're looking for. So remember all 3 and we will have membership growth.
Perfect. Thank you.
So Well, thank you very much, Stephanie. And yet again, I think you've hit so many of the questions that have come up there. Like I said before, we will get to those questions. It might take us a bit of time. There's two of us and there's about 200 questions, but we will get there eventually because it is important. And that is it, folks. A huge thank you to our guests this evening. And as I said before, I was fortunate enough to facilitate at the International Assembly and witness the general sessions where Stephanie talked about the magic of Rotary and how we can make our clubs irresistible. And we were all inspired by the messages that were delivered. And I can tell you that our incoming leaders, the district governors elected, they were buzzing with excitement during the breakout sessions. So let us all have that golden thread of the action plan in everything that we do, if we keep remembering that. And it's simple and it's the point. And if we follow it, we will succeed. Let's make our clubs a comfortable place for people to come. And let's open up Rotary International. Let's see people, let people see outside the four walls of their clubs. And it's not just a local Rotary club, we are Rotary International. So big changes are happening. And as I've said before, I heard a really good quote actually from one of our senior leaders recently when they said, Rotary in these islands is back in business. And I agree, and vibrant, comfortable, and of course, simply irresistible clubs are going to play a huge part in those changes. So thank you all for joining us, and to President-elect Stephanie, the very best of luck on your continued journey as our President of Rotary International, and of course, Tom, who I know will be an outstanding aide. Thank you both for joining us. Let's all grow Rotary together, and a very good night, everybody.
Night, everyone.